I used to pick up extra cash by dog sitting for families in my neighborhood. It was easy money. Watch a dog, feed it, take it for a walk, and spend the night in a cozy house. Simple. Or at least, it had been simple. Until the last time I ever accepted one of those jobs. It was late September, and a woman named Mrs. Calloway reached out, asking if I could watch her Doberman, Baxter, for a long weekend. I'd never sat for her before, but she lived in a nice area, and the pay was good, so I agreed. She left me a detailed note about Baxter's feeding schedule and bedtime routine, along with a warning. Please keep the basement door locked at all times. Baxter gets nervous if it's left open. That struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe the basement had a draft, or Baxter was just a nervous dog. The first night was normal. Baxter was a sweetheart, always sticking close to me. When it was time for bed, I made sure the basement door was locked as instructed and turned in for the night. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to the sound of Baxter growling. It wasn't a playful growl. It was low, guttural, and directed at the bedroom door. My heart pounded as I listened. The house was silent except for the distant hum of the fridge. I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a noise outside, but Baxter didn't stop. He was rigid, staring at the door, ears pinned back. Then I heard it, a faint creak from downstairs. I held my breath. The house was supposed to be empty. Slowly, I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. I didn't want to go downstairs, but I knew I had to check. I crept down, Baxter at my side, still tense. Everything looked normal. The doors were locked, no windows open. But then, my eyes landed on the basement door. It was open. A cold chill washed over me. I knew I had locked it. My stomach twisted as I stepped closer, peering down into the darkness. I expected to see, well, I don't know what I expected. There was nothing. Just the empty stairwell leading into the blackness below. A part of me wanted to slam the door shut and pretend it never happened. But I needed to be sure. I turned on the basement light and descended slowly, my ears straining for any sound. The air down there was damp, stale. The basement was unfinished, just concrete floors, exposed pipes, and an old wooden shelf lined with dusty boxes. Then, something caught my eye. In the farthest corner, where the light barely reached, there were footprints. Bare, human footprints. They led from the bottom of the stairs to a small door I hadn't noticed before, a crawl space. The door was slightly ajar. My stomach lurched. Someone had been down here, or worse, someone was still in there. I turned and bolted up the stairs, Baxter barking furiously behind me. I slammed the basement door shut, locked it, and pushed a chair against it for good measure. My hands were shaking as I called 911. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the basement, and what they found still makes my skin crawl. Inside the crawl space, there was a makeshift bed, a pile of old blankets, empty food wrappers, and a rusted kitchen knife. Someone had been living down there. And the worst part, the officers found fresh footprints leading away from the crawl space. But no one was there. Whoever had been hiding in that basement had slipped away just before I went down. I never dog sat again after that. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that if Baxter hadn't woken me up, I might have never woken up at all. I never expected a simple dog-sitting job to turn into the most terrifying night of my life. A friend of mine, Alex, had asked me to watch his German Shepherd, Max, while he went out of town for the weekend. It seemed easy enough. Feed him, let him out, and keep him company. Alex's house was in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town, backed up against a stretch of dense woods. I'd been there before and always thought it had a weird, isolated feeling, but I shrugged it off. The first night started out normal. Max was a great dog, playful, affectionate, and easygoing. Around 9 p.m., I let him outside in the backyard to do his business. The yard was big, stretching all the way back to the tree line, with only a single dim porch light casting long shadows across the grass. As I stood at the door, waiting for Max, I heard it. A whistle. It wasn't a bird or the wind. It was a deliberate human whistle. A long, slow tune, carried through the trees from somewhere just beyond the yard. I felt an immediate chill. Who would be out there this late? I scanned the tree line, but I couldn't see anything. Max, however, had frozen in place. His ears perked, staring intently at the woods. Then he growled. I'd never seen a German Shepherd look so aggressive before. His back was stiff, his lips slightly curled, eyes locked on the darkness between the trees. I called his name, but he didn't move. Then the whistle came again, closer this time. I yanked the door open and whistled for Max. He hesitated, still staring, then bolted toward me, tail tucked between his legs. The second he was inside, I locked the door. I tried to shake the uneasy feeling, telling myself it was just some random hiker or a neighbor messing around. But Max refused to leave my side for the rest of the night, constantly glancing toward the back door. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to a low, guttural growl. Max was at the foot of the couch where I had fallen asleep, his body tense. Then I heard it. Soft scratching. It was coming from the back door. At first, I thought it might be an animal, maybe a raccoon. But then came the whistle. Right outside the door, I stopped breathing. Max barked, loud and vicious, launching himself at the door. The scratching stopped, but I heard faint shuffling, as if someone was walking away. Grabbing my phone, I turned on the flashlight and hesitantly crept toward the back door. Max stayed right next to me, his body pressed against my leg. I peeked through the curtain covering the small window. Nothing. But then, just as I was about to turn away, I saw it. Footprints in the dirt, leading from the woods to the porch. They weren't animal prints. They were human, barefoot. I locked every door and window, turned off all the lights, and sat with Max in the corner of the living room, heart pounding in my chest. The rest of the night was silent. By morning, I had almost convinced myself that maybe it was some kind of sleep-deprived hallucination. But when I stepped outside to check the backyard, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Near the tree line, carved into the bark of a tree, was a single word. Whistle. I called Alex immediately, telling him everything. There was a long pause on the other end before he finally said, in a shaky voice, "I've heard it before too." I never dog sat for him again. I've always loved dogs. So when my coworker, Emily, asked me to house sit and watch her golden retriever, Max, the weekend, I didn't hesitate to say yes. The money was good, and all I had to do was feed Max, take him for walks, and make sure nothing happened to the house. Easy. Emily's house was in a quiet neighborhood, almost too quiet. It was one of those newer developments where every house looked the same, with perfectly trimmed lawns and motion sensor lights on every driveway. The kind of place that should feel safe. The first night was uneventful. Max was a sweetheart, following me around the house and curling up at my feet while I watched TV. Before bed, I let him out into the backyard to do his business. When I called him back in, He hesitated at the door, staring past me into the house, his ears perked up. I glanced behind me, but nothing was there. Just the darkened living room and the faint hum of the fridge. "Come on, Max," I said, patting my leg. He finally trotted inside but kept glancing over his shoulder. I brushed it off. Dogs get weird sometimes. That night, I woke up to the sound of Max growling. A deep, guttural sound that sent a shiver down my spine. He was standing in the hallway outside the bedroom, his body stiff, ears pinned back. He was staring at the stairs. I sat up. "Max, what's wrong, buddy?" Then I heard it, a soft creaking sound, like a footstep on wood. I froze. Emily's house was newer. The floors didn't creak like that unless someone was stepping hard. Max let out a low whine, his tail tucked between his legs. He wasn't barking, just growling, almost as if he was trying to warn me without making too much noise. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and turned on the flashlight, aiming it toward the stairs. Nothing. Just the empty hallway leading down to the darkened living room. I tried to shake off the unease. Maybe the house was just settling. Maybe I imagined it. But Max didn't move from his spot. He kept staring at the stairs for what felt like forever, before finally lying down with a huff. It took me a while to fall back asleep, but eventually, exhaustion won. The next day, everything seemed fine. I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. That night, though, things got worse. Around 2 a.m., I woke up again. This time, it wasn't Max's growling that woke me. It was the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps moving around downstairs. My heart started pounding. Someone was in the house. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and checked the security system Emily had told me about. No doors or windows had been opened. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped. Silence. I wanted to believe I was imagining things, but Max was already at the door, his body tense. Then, a loud knock. 3 sharp knocks on the bedroom door. My stomach dropped. The footsteps had been downstairs. No one had come up the stairs. Max started barking furiously, his body pressed against my legs. I was frozen, too scared to move. Then I heard it. A whisper, right outside the door. A raspy, breathy voice. I couldn't make out the words, but it was right there, right on the other side. I bolted. I grabbed Max by the collar and sprinted into the bathroom, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. The operator answered, but before I could say a word, Max let out a deep rumbling growl that I had never heard from him before. And then, silence. No knocks, no footsteps, no whispering, just complete, suffocating silence. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They searched the house top to bottom and found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no windows open, no one inside. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the couch with every light on, gripping Max like a lifeline. Emily came back the next morning. I told her everything, expecting her to laugh it off or say I had an overactive imagination. Instead, she went pale. I should have told you, she said, her voice shaky. It's happened before, a few times. I stared at her. She swallowed hard. I thought it stopped. I left that house as fast as I could. I don't dog sit anymore.